start in Dharma talk. Please join me in invoking the Buddha's name 3 times. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Dear Venerable Teacher, dear Sangha, good afternoon. I don't actually have an agenda today because I'm just not prepared for anything, but in my next session though, I will start to do teaching and commentary on the Dhammapada, which is one of the oldest and most important influential Buddhist texts there is. So, but I would have started today, but I'm still working on translations. Because typically whenever I create like any of the chant books, or create anything to chant or to study, typically create a rewrite within my own translation. So right now I'm using 4 different sources to do my translation. So it's taking longer than expected. I've been working on it all summer, and I'm still not finished. I still haven't had time. So hopefully by next session, next week, teacher will do the teaching next week. The week after, I'll start the Dhammapada. So if anybody wants to find enlightenment, Dhammapada is the way to go. Dhammapada is essentially, for me, it's almost like the Buddhist Bible. Buddhism doesn't have a type of Bible sort of text, but the Dhammapada is probably one of the closest. So instead, what I'll do today is just kind of open it up, just have a quick Q&A, which I usually do whenever I finish big sections of teaching. So since we just spent all summer long teaching on dependent origination, we completed that during the last session, so I'll take a quick break. Do a Q&A session for anybody who has any questions, concerns, emotional outbursts. Remember, there's no stupid questions, just stupid people who don't ask questions. So don't be a stupid person. Yes, ma'am. I knew you were going to ask the first question.
I actually follow a monk on TikTok, and he's been experiencing situations where people have put false accusations against him. I'm just curious, what does Buddhism teach towards that? Because right now this conversation is more towards, I guess you say, legal remedies versus more of like the spiritual side of things right now.
Who's this monk? I'm curious.
I'm finding out the actor is in Houston.
In Houston?
Yes.
Well, any false accusation or false anything, lies, any of that stuff, falls under right speech, right, which is the third of the Eightfold Path. And so in Buddhism, we teach you to speak correctly and do not speak false speech, right? And for the most part, if someone's accusing you of something, there's nothing you can really do besides either let it play out or show them proof of the contrary, right? Nowadays, it's maybe easier to prove that because we have technology, we have text messages, emails, social media, whatever to show, hey, here's the proof of me not doing this or doing what you are accusing me of not doing, whatever may be the case. So now, because of that, there are the legal matters that we have to take into consideration, which may not have been there 2,600 years ago during the Buddhist time, for the most part. So you have to play a very delicate balancing game, because as monks and nuns, we are apolitical, right? internally, we can say, yes, I support this, or I believe in this, or I don't believe in that, or I believe this person, or not person, or I vote for this person, or not vote for that person, or maybe, right? We still do our civil duty when it comes to voting, but externally, we're apolitical. I can't tell you who I vote for. I'm not going to discuss politics with you. I'm not going to discuss this or that. It's none of my business. That's not your business. So outwardly, you really just have to give the presentation of this is not true, or this is false. This is who I am. This is who I'm not according to the accusations, and let nature take its course. Because the truth always comes out, regardless. Whether it's a few days, a few weeks, a few years, decades, after the world ends, it doesn't matter. The truth eventually comes, right? Like we say, karma's a witch, right? So it's gonna come back to you. So it's a balancing act in our day and age now. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. Great question. Other questions you guys have? Come on, this is your opportunity to get it all out. You're pondering. Continue to ponder. Other questions?
So, I noticed, it seems really silly when I think about it, but I've noticed, like, I guess synchronicity.
I'm sorry, in what?
Synchronicity.
Okay.
And what I guess that means to me is, again, silly. So I'll be watching a television show, and lasagna comes up on the television show. And then my roommate downstairs is cooking lasagna. And then the next show I watch has lasagna. It sounds really silly, but like little things like that. And I'm like, that's really odd. Yeah.
It's a coincidence. I don't know what there's no divine intervention there. I mean, it depends on who you ask. Some people believe in those types of signs, right? Or seeing repeated numbers in many places, right? And there's some belief systems where those numbers mean something, or the consistency of seeing multiple things like lasagna over and over again has meaning. To me, it probably just means you really want lasagna. Now, I really want lasagna. But it's the same thing when you really look at it in other parts of your life, right? Let's say you want a new car, you want a Tesla, and all of a sudden you go out, all you see are Teslas everywhere, right? Because your mind is fixated on Tesla, or whatever, any other car, right? Like, truly, when you leave today, think of a car, like strongly think of a car, any car you want, right? And visualize it, see in your mind. And I guarantee you, on your way home, you're going to see it at least 10 times. Right? So it's kind of the same thing. Your mind will recognize the things that are already kind of there that you may kind of subtly want, right? But there's no spiritual magic about it.
It's Google magic.
Google magic, right? Exactly. Google knows everything you hear and say and want, and all of a sudden there's 5 million ads about it. Good question. I like that question. But I really do want lasagna, though. What else you got?
Okay, so in the Western sense, Buddhism is not a religion, correct? In the Western sense of the term.
Yes and no. What is religion to you? Let me ask you that.
Praying to the deity.
Praying to deity is a religion to you. Okay.
That's the model, that's what we did.
So religion is a tricky word to associate a belief system to, because everyone has an idea of what religion is. socially, we have a general idea of what religion is. Religion is Christianity, it's Judaism, it's Catholicism, it's Hinduism, it's Buddhism, all the isms, right? But does the ism itself create the religion? Is the ism itself the religion, right? Why is it a religion? Is what you should be asking yourself. Why is this a religion? And so in Buddhism, it is a religion. It can be a religion because we have a central figure in our case, right? We have rituals and we have ceremonies, all these little small things that people associate religion with, right? But in the sense, but if you look at it from the sense of to worship a deity, then Buddhism is not a religion because we don't worship anything. The statues are here, we pray and we chant and we invoke, but that's not worshiping, right, necessarily. You may see the word worship in some texts and discourses, but it's a mistranslation of I can't remember the Pali word, but it's mostly mistranslated, and it should be the word devotion, maybe, right? Because we're not worshiping the Buddha, we're not sacrificing for him. He is here as an object of mindfulness, of concentration, right? Because when you see the image of the Buddha, or see a statue of the Buddha, or any of the Bodhisattvas, what should provoke you, or should provoke in your mind, is the characteristics that the Buddha represents, right? What does the Buddha represent? The Buddha represents enlightenment, compassion, love, equanimity, peace, happiness, nirvana, right? All these different characteristics is what the Buddha represents. And so when we're chanting, when we're bowing, when we're praying, or doing whatever, we're doing that to remind ourselves of the characteristics of the Buddha or the Bodhisattva so that we can develop those same characteristics within ourselves, right? And so there's no worshiping because it's made out of plastic or cement or fiberglass, right? They're physically not here. So what's the point of bowing to them or worshiping them? They're not here to take credit for your worship or for your bows. They don't care about that. They're not going to answer your prayers. If you're praying for money and happiness and wealth and prosperity, then it's empty talk. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are not here to grant you wishes. They're not genies. If you want a genie, go to Genie land. I don't know where genies are. Egypt. So, depending on how you want to perceive a religion, Buddhism is a religion or it's not a religion. To me, it's a religion, it's a lifestyle, it's a way of life, it's a philosophy, it's a psychology, it's liberal arts, it's science, it's different many things, depending on how you utilize it. That makes sense. Yes, sir.
I'd like to contrast it with the comparison between the monotheistic religions, where there's an external God, as opposed to Buddhism, which is a psychological, mind-centered, it's an internal practice as opposed to externalizing any of it. Does that make sense? And so to me, maybe it's a religion, but what's the difference between Eastern and Western religion? It seems to me that that's one of the biggest ones. I was raised in a Christian church, and the whole dogma there is that there's an external superior being that we bow to and worship, etc. And so, helps me with that. I like to think of it as much more of psychology than religion.
It's definitely a psychology. Yes, sir.
I just have a comment. In the early days of the Lao Temple, the teacher and the other new people would come to class, and they did 3 or 4 visits, and then somebody would say, well, what about God? Which means they have, they're trying to take, like you said, they're trying to take their Christian upbringing and just somehow make sense of it in the Buddhist tradition. So they have to transcend that concept first, like really, that's part of the journey.
There are about 16, 17 great great questions that are unanswered by the Buddha. The people ask him, right? Where his answers were in silence, right? The silence was his answers. Because the questions asked were unimportant to the development of their spiritual path, right? So if someone asked the Buddha, who is God? Where is God? Who created the earth? Who created the heavens and the world? Blah, blah, blah. All like the metaphysical questions. The Buddha answered in silence, because none of those questions and none of the answers, if there are answers, will make any difference in your attainment of enlightenment. If you ask the question, where is God? Where is he located? And you get an answer, does that make any difference to your journey? Can you go there if you know where he's located? No. So there's no sense in asking questions that have useless answers. If that makes any sense. Okay. I see you pondering something. What are you pondering?
I'm just wondering about the difference between being, I guess, a practitioner of Buddhism in a group versus solitary, and choosing solitary path.
Like for general studying practice?
I'm thinking, I guess, just mostly the idea of those who choose to take a path of enlightenment but separated from others, more of living a solitary life, versus those that choose that they want to be involved in a group. And what is that, just deciding that you want to take more of an ideal path towards nirvana? Or is there any differential in that path choice?
So there's some benefits to both sides, whether you practice solitary, you practice solitarily, I don't know if that's the word, or with a group or sangha, right? So when I first started practicing, probably my first 2-3 years of practice, I practiced on my own, right? But it came to a point where I recognized that my solitary practice was not enough, right? I had questions that I could not find answers to, or I had answers that just didn't make sense, right? And so, being part of the group or part of the sangha, like we are, gives you an opportunity to grow and expand your knowledge, because now you have more than just your own solitary insight and knowledge of practices, but now you have a whole room of more answers, potential answers, right? Because then you come to things that answers that you've interpreted on your own, right? Let's say you read something and you've created your own interpretation, right? That interpretation may be wrong or may be right? If you come in a group setting and ask that same question, then you're going to get probably 10 different answers, right? Different interpretations. And you may think that I'm getting 10 different answers, it makes no sense, that it's answering my question. But it gives you 10 different perspectives. That way you can then kind of connect the dots on your own and make your own correct interpretation from the 10 different sources, right? Which is why now when I'm translating the Dhammapada, I'm using 4 different interpretations, right? I'm using 3 English translations and a Pali text, right? To make my own wording, so it makes more sense to me and how I would want to teach it and how I'm going to interpret it and create the commentary. And so there's a huge benefit in a group setting, because you get that full, a holistic education, if that makes sense.
Yes.
It also puts so the monastic who can, along with all these different perspectives, can sense that and help. If all these perspectives are all together going off somewhere that's not helpful, then our spiritual leader is there present to say, the spirit's back, right?
So the one thing you'll probably see a lot in Buddhism is the sentence of 84,000 Dharma doors, right? 84,000 Dharma doors is a way of saying that the Buddha taught 84,000 different ways. The Dhammapada is a great example of that, because it's not from a single source of one discourse that he gave, right? It's a collection of verses over the 45 years that he taught, right? And so it was created a couple years after he passed away, right? And so all the verses in there are direct teachings from the Buddha, and they're all usually like a verse or two. Usually every other verse is connected, right? And so these are very short teachings, and these short teachings were given to specific individuals according to their circumstance and the situation that they're in. The Buddha didn't go and blindly teach. He went and he observed who he's teaching to. He observed that if you are knowledgeable, if you are, highly educated or not educated, he tried to ask about your life experiences, what you're going through, what trauma do you have holding on to, and he created his teaching around those specific situations so that they are applicable to the specific people. So the Eightfold Path, for instance, Eightfold Path, I give you a teaching that's one generalization, but there's 84,000 different ways that the Buddha taught it, because according to each individual person, they would understand and learn differently. So that's one of the beauties of Buddhism and the Buddha's teaching, is that he didn't blindly teach. He looked at you, he observed your personality and what hardships you may be going through, what questions you may have, and tailored his teaching accordingly. Which is why I love Buddhism. There's no one correct way. There's no one correct answer, right? So that's why we have thousands of books, but they're all the same topic. They're all about eradicating suffering, becoming happy, and attaining enlightenment. Simple. But because we all don't learn the same way, we all don't have the same knowledge, we all don't have the same upbringing or insights or wisdom, so we have to learn in different ways in order for us to make a click, make that connection. Great question. Yes, sir.
Can you be a Buddhist and something else, another religion? Because there was a podcast I used to listen to, and they were always opening us with a phrase that you treated saying, don't use Buddhism to be a better Buddhist. Use it to be a better whatever religion.
Yes, and that's the case. So the question was, can you be Buddhist and something else? And Buddhism, Christian, Buddhism, Jew. Again, it depends on how you see Buddhism or what you see Buddhism as. Because there's some religions that say you absolutely cannot practice two religions at once. Right? It's a sin. And most monotheistic religions, that's the case. But like you said, there are the teachings that say, sure, be a Christian when one practice Buddhism to become a better Christian, become a better Jew, become a better Muslim, right? It's a complementary practice. Because truly, if you go into any discourse and take out the words that are specific to Buddhism, like Buddha or Bodhisattva or enlightenment, and just generally look at it, the text is still the same, right? There's no really change. Whereas adding these additional words to help you envision and visualize something beyond the simplicity of the words. So if you take out all the religious text, words, and phrases, it's still a spiritual. What's the word I'm looking for? Entity, phenomenon, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, sure, why not? If that helps you in your practice and how you want to live your life, go for it. Who might say that's not right or that's not wrong? I can tell you that's right or wrong. Buddha can tell you that's right or wrong. Jesus can tell you that's right or wrong. You can say that's right or wrong. Good question. I haven't heard that question in a very long time. Okay, what else? Fine. No stupid questions, just stupid people with no questions.
Google history says that there
Say again?
As far as wars that have happened in history,
Mm-hmm.
Google says that there
Google
is
says, okay.
history of monks being involved in warfare. Is that true?
What time period are we looking at?
This was a couple hundred years ago.
No.
Okay.
Buddhists have never been involved in war. They've been affected by war, right? The Nalanda University in India, for instance, was demolished by Muslim warfarers. And they've always been killed, slaughtered by externalists, but in itself, Buddhism never been involved in war. However, in recent history though, there is one monk in Laos, Cambodia, somewhere of those East Asian countries, where, I can't remember his name, but if you just Google Buddhist terrorist, I don't know, I'm just guessing here. This monk, he's no longer a monk. He's been defrocked by Buddhist society, but he still wears robes and goes about living his life as a monk. But he is essentially a war terrorist because he is fighting against the Muslims in his area who are trying to take over, right? And so his logic is that he's saving Buddhism, that he's helping Buddhism to survive, right? Where he's actually just killing people to save Buddhism. Buddhism doesn't need saving. But he has that very cult-like mentality where he feels like war is the only defense mechanism to save Buddhism, and it's not. He's literally breaking the very first rule of Buddhism, is to abstain from killing. It's literally the first rule. He's breaking it. I understand maybe if you forget about it, maybe it was like the 10th or the 11th or the 100th or the 500th rule. But the very first one, come on now, that's just stupid. So he's a stupid person. But he is not a monk anymore. He's defrocked. Everyone knows what defrocked means, right?
Isn't there in the Indonesian country where the government is egging on or helping a genocide of those that are not Buddhist? I remember hearing about that a couple years ago.
I don't know. Again, I don't involve myself in politics, so if something's happening during my monastic years that unless it's been brought up to me, I don't recall. I'm sorry. Maybe? I don't know. If you want to Google it, let me know.
You could count on the fact that the institution is always going to be a peaceful institution. There might be, some stray members here and there.
Right. Right. Like any religion, any society, any organization, there's going to be bad apples, right? What we cannot do, which is unfortunate because we do this now anyway, when it comes to Muslims, for instance, right? People are just terrified of all Muslims because of the few incidents that the few bad apples did. How long ago it's been now? 20 years? Years since 9/11, right? And so now we have a stigma against Muslims that they're all terrorists, regardless of who they are, right? And so I wouldn't say it's okay to discriminate. It's okay to discriminate against the bad people, but you can't discriminate a whole organization because of one bad person. Does that make sense? And so if there's a war going on, like the monk in Cambodia or Laos, whatever country it is, he's the bad apple in Buddhism, right? But you can't judge all of Buddhism because he's the one doing the killing. I mean, everyone else is peaceful, right? So you have to take in perspective what actually is and what is happening, and make sure that the connection is not, this is because of that. This is not because of that. I mean, karmically speaking, everything has a cause and effect. You can't judge the bad apple based on an entire religion or organization. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question about forgiveness. So,
Don't forgive. It's a bad idea. I'm kidding. Go ahead. Sorry.
So I understand that when we do bad actions, we can just say, oh, I'm sorry, and it's all forgiven. We don't want that bad energy. So we must probably do good actions too. But my question is more about when you're the victim of a bad action. Just like a general idea of how to take like a Buddhist approach to a bad action towards you. For example, I did have something that became a legal problem, a felony. So I did go towards the legal channels, but I'm concerned about my intentions. Are my intentions to balance the scales or get revenge? So that's why I want to see like your thoughts or more like deeper thoughts on forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Well, revenge is never the answer. I'll tell you that now. If I gave you a clown costume and you were to have it next to you, you're not wearing it, and someone calls you a clown, does that actually make you a clown? No. So if someone says something bad to you, to insult you, to demean you, does those words actually make you that thing they're calling you? Probably not. But we have a habit of allowing our ego to say, oh, how dare you call me that? How dare you say that about me? Right? Our ego is there to defend itself. So our ego is saying, don't let them call you that. Don't let them say that about you. Don't let that happen to you. Blah, 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 et cetera. Right? Because the ego is there to defend itself. It doesn't want to feel small or demeaned like that by people. But that's the actions of the unpracticed, the undisciplined, right? Because if you are a practitioner of Buddhism, let's say that, or at least in meditation, and if you understand reality as it is, then whatever they say to you is just that. Why have an effect on you? Because what is it going to do to you? If you take personally what they call you or offend to you, you take it personally, what's that? How's that helping you? It's making things worse. Now you're lingering about it, now you're sad about it, you're depressed, you're angry, you're looking for revenge, you're wanting to retaliate, you're looking for the perfect comeback. What does anything do? How does that help you? It doesn't help you at all. And so when those situations happen, it's important to smile at it. Say thank you. Say thank you. Or, if you're like me, who's very sarcastic, I'll just say something sarcastic back. And I think I mentioned this before, like in high school, I was kind of a bully, unfortunately. But I'm half Middle Eastern, so sometimes people are like, oh, you have a big nose, and I'm like, thanks, it's custom made, right? So I don't take offense to it. Why? Who cares? I know I have a big nose, thank you. It's part of the Middle Eastern culture. And so when it comes to things like that, and I've mentioned this before, ask yourself, is what they're saying to you, or what they're telling to you, is it true? Yes or no? If it's true, why are you upset? If it's not true, why are you upset? Right? So why should you become offended? There's no point to it. It's stupid. We're not stupid people, hopefully. And so always ask yourself that question. Is it true? Yes or no? That's all you have to answer, yes or no. And then you let it go. Because if you hang on to it, then you're going to be in a bad mood. You're going to cause your significant other to be in a bad mood. Then you're going to cause your kids to be in bad moods. And, just that's a huge domino effect. So, it's hard, of course, it's easier said than done. It's hard to sometimes not take offense, especially if you're in a heated situation, if you're arguing, or if it's whatever, right? Sometimes it's difficult to be mindful of that and to say, okay, this is what's going on. Maybe they're going through something, because you don't know the other person. You're not in their head. You don't know what they're going through, what they're suffering through. And so what they're saying could just be out of that suffering that they're having. And because you don't understand that suffering, you're taking it personally. But if you're a true practitioner or a bodhisattva, then you know, hey, that person is also suffering. And so what they say is just coming out of that suffering. It's a manifestation of the suffering that they're going through. And because it's a manifestation of the suffering they're going through, you can't hold them accountable to it. Yes, they are accountable for saying it because they are unmindful. But since you're the mindful one of the two, you should do your job and watch your thinking. Because if you don't watch your thinking, what's going to happen? You're thinking bad thoughts, and then you're going to say something bad in retaliation. After you've said something bad, you can't take it back. It's said, right? You can apologize all you want. It's already said. And if you can't catch yourself from the speaking point, after you've said it, if you still can't be mindful and hold yourself accountable, then you're going to do something bad. So now not only did you think bad thoughts, you've said the bad things, and now you're doing the bad things. So you're just adding more and more negative karma. So if you're able to stop and think and be mindful and just be aware of what the thoughts are going, what thoughts you're having as you're in that situation, be aware of what the thoughts are and how they're coming up and why they're coming up, then you can be your own police and stop that from manifesting from outside of the mind. And then automatically become a better person. And so, of course, again, it's easier said than done, because we're all habit people, we're all habit beings, right? And when someone's yelling at us, we habitually want to yell back. Someone's cursing at us, we habitually want to curse back. Someone cut us off, we want to cut them off again, right? And so it's difficult to be your own, to police yourself. But that's why it's called practice, right? You're not going to attain enlightenment overnight, unless you're very skilled. But for us normal people, it's going to take time. And so that's why you practice, that's why you meditate, that's why you contemplate. To learn about your own mind. Like Leon said, Buddhism is mostly, of everything else, it's mostly a psychology. It is the medicine of life. It is how to escape suffering, to be happy, to be peaceful, and be tranquil, and to attain enlightenment. And the only way we can do that is by taming our mind. Right? Buddhism had a motto, would be, do good, do not be bad, tame your mind. Simple. You want to know what Buddhism is? That's what Buddhism is. And we'll go right in the Dhammapada when we get to it, that verse. It's in chapter 17? 18. But anyway, does that make sense? That's your question?
The specific situation I'm referring to, it was a little more serious. So my question is more aimed towards I had a break-in, and I took further to get to the police and whatever. If my intentions are just this sounds to be revenge, I might be correcting the negative effect of that action to the universe by maybe these personal consequences or learning their lesson. I just want to make sure that my intentions are not revenge. If I proceed, I'm doing the right thing because my right intentions are right, not hateful.
Well, I can't tell you what your intentions are. You can only answer that question. Because so a lot of times, if something like a break-in happened, right, you can report it, you can tell the police, you can tell them what's missing, you can put an insurance claim on it, you can do a whole bunch of different things. But sometimes the outcome is nothing, right? They can't do anything about it. The police can't do anything about it. And so, what was the reasoning? You have to ask yourself, what is the reason that I'm doing this, right? If nowadays, because we have insurance, we have homeowners insurance and renters insurance, all these other insurances that can potentially compensate you for what you've lost or got damaged, that would probably be the only logical reason to make those reports, right? Otherwise, unless you've like shot the person or handcuffed them or something, you're like, hey, come pick up this dude. right? And so if there is a outcome where it's beneficial for you, to you, right, like getting stuff back or money back, then that's fine, right? Your intentions is to just to recuperate what you lost. But if your intention is to revenge against the person who did it because you want them to suffer because they caused you suffering, then you're just extending the line of suffering, right? You're just causing more suffering. Hate cannot be defeated by hate. If I hate you, you're gonna hit me back. Then I get angry, and you hit me back, and I run into Christopher, and Christopher gets mad, he hits me, and now he hits you, and it just goes down the line, right? There's no end. Where's the end? So I can't tell you if it's revenge or if it's your intentions are well garnished, and you have to answer that yourself. Like I said, if there's benefit to you, to your family, that's fine. That's good intention. If you're wanting this person to suffer because it causes you suffering, then they're just going to get angry that you retaliated, and then they're going to do it to someone else. There's no stopping them. Does that answer your question? Make sense? Good question.
But then kind of follow up then, but I mean, given what happened and on police and homeboy getting help with the family or whatever.
He's a lawyer, someone listen to this. Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, she followed the procedures for a law that was obviously broken. So, does going through the procedures thereafter for a pre-trial, a criminal hearing, or a jury trial, and possible punishment or a plea bargain, if you were to opt for that, I mean, are we not supposed to go through that as peaceful Buddhists? I mean,
It's up to you. I can tell you that's right or wrong. This is way beyond the Buddhist time. So there's nothing in the text saying, hey, you need to take him to proceedings, you need to sue him, you need to countersue, you need to do this, you need to do that. You don't know. It's all about morality in this case, right? And the intentions behind the actions that you do or want to do and what good may come of it. But I can't answer that question. It's going to be up to you. If you want to do something that's potentially negative and not very Buddhist, repent. Like a whole repentance ceremony where you vow 108 times. So it's going to cause you very some achy muscles the next day. So that may help influence you. Like, you know what, I really want to do this again, so I'm not going to do any more bad things. Right? It's the intention behind repentance. But I can answer that question. It's a personal matter, not a Buddhist one. That makes sense. Okay, one more question.
I've seen on TikTok where there are monks who practice decide that they accept offerings from people or they accept donations from people that will. I really want to understand more of what that's about and how is that about trying to create humbleness in the person, or where does that tradition come from?
That is one of the oldest Buddhist traditions from the Buddhist time. So when people were ordained as monks or nuns, you receive 3 sets of robes, an alms bowl, and a sitting mat, right? That's all you have in your possession. That's all we own as monks and nuns. And so during the Buddhist time, because they devoted themselves to the practice and toward the attainment of enlightenment, they have to live off the generosity of others, right? And so they go for alms, with no intention of maybe they receive food, maybe they don't, right? They just go, if someone wants to offer to them food to them, that's great, then they can eat, right? They all go back to the monastery and they share all the food together. And so it's a practice for the monks and nuns for humility, because you're accepting what is given. You're not being picky, right? You're not going around in the bowl like, oh wait a minute, what are you gonna do? Is that fish? I'm vegetarian, I don't want fish, right? And you're being picky about it. No, that's not that's not how problems work. You go and you accept what is given, right? To be humble. But it's also merit-bearing for the people who give the donation. donations, right? Because there's a lot of good karmic action you can do as a layperson, and giving alms or donations to the temple or to monks and nuns is one of the highest you can do, right? It's one of the most meritorious things you can do, is to give alms or donations to monks and nuns. And so that practice is still practiced to this day in the Theravada tradition, right? There's two main traditions of Buddhism, the Theravada and the Mahayana. So the Theravada strictly live off the food that is given to them, that is donated to them, right? So they go alms round every morning, and they only have one meal a day at noontime, right? So whatever is given, they eat it. Whether it's enough or it's not enough, they eat it. It doesn't matter what it is, right? It's leftovers, it's food, it's pig, it's meat, it's whatever it is. They eat what they ever given. And the Mahayana side of things, like our tradition, we practice that to an extent, but as Buddhism traveled into different countries and more northern countries where climates were colder, like in China, going out for alms round when it's negative 100 degrees or whatever just wasn't practical, right? And so they had to cater and feed themselves. So most monasteries have their own vegetable garden, right? We do. And so they either make their own food, grow their own food, and they accept whatever people give to them as well, right? And so, for the most part, Theravada is the only tradition that still practices that. So Theravada is usually in Thailand, Burma, some parts of Vietnam, Laos, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, right? Those are the Theravada heavy countries where that's still practiced in this thing. So it's not really done in the States or in Western countries because people are like, that's weird. Why are you going around with a bowl in your head? Right? People don't understand what it is. But it's also a problem because in Western societies, donating is also not entirely practiced either, right? Because in Western countries, there's a bad taste when it comes to donations because people are traumatized by the Catholic Church and the donation of the Catholic Church's requests of their devotees, right? And because of that stigma, because of that bad taste of Catholicism asking for donations, people till this day don't tend to give donations, right? So it's unfortunate because a lot of temples in Western countries are ran strictly by donations, right? And so if they get donations, they're able to continue the practice, they're able to maintain the temple and provide services and classes and whatever else, right? According to the needs of the community. But there are other parts where there's either not enough people to practice with, maybe there's not enough people that are willing to do donations, and so other means have to be done. Like in our temple, we're self-sufficient. We all have day jobs because we don't have enough donations to support ourselves. And so now it's very cultural based, depending on where you are. So giving donations is great. You gain a lot of merit by doing that, but people don't often practice that, unfortunately. It's a dying practice in the States. Don't let it be. Okay, great questions. Well, it's already past my time, but if you have any other questions after the service, you're more than welcome to ask. But for now, we will transfer the merit and go to chanting. Namo Shakyamuni. Accumulated here today, we wish to transfer the merit to all sentient beings and wish them full enlightenment. Before I forget, next Saturday our meditation class is starting again, so it'll be every second and fourth Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. So this coming Saturday will be our first class back.
Please sit down. Our hearts and our minds. all